Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.wordpress.com. I'm going to go a little old school today. I'm going to talk about a particular issue of a comic. I haven't done that in a while. I actually started the Longbox Review podcast doing that. My premiere episode was a talk about a Brave and the Bold issue featuring the Legion of Superheroes. So I thought I haven't done that, like I said, I haven't done that in a while, so I thought I would do that today with this really awesome book, Batman Incorporated, number 13, the epic conclusion to Grant Morrison's story. There's just so many good little things in this comic that I wanted to just run through the comic, talk about the plot, talk about the things that I like, and we'll see what happens from there. So a little background first, because I came to Grant Morrison's Batman run in a reverse kind of way. I actually started reading the end of the story, or near the end of the story, before I went back and read the beginning of the story. And by that I mean I actually read Batman 701 and 702, which was the missing chapter to the R.I.P. storyline. And of course, from there it went into Batman Incorporated, well before the New 52. And I've been reading ever since. But eventually I did go back and read R.I.P. And I just finished recently the Black Glove Deluxe Edition. And I actually do still have to read The Return of Ra's al Ghul, although I understand that I don't need to really read that to get the whole Grant Morrison storyline. So that Batman 701 issue came out in 2010, I believe, and here we are 3 years later, and I'm reading the end of the story. So, just to warn you, I will be talking in depth about the events in the comic book, so consider yourself spoiler warned. Okay, so let's start off with the cover. A great cover by Chris Burnham. You have the Batman logo about in the middle of this, with Batman leaping out. So the Batman logo is basically his cape, and so he's leaping out at you. But that's so you get this nested Batman leap out of the cover, which is really cool. So in the larger picture is Batman closest to you, I guess. And so you barely see his chin at the top of the cover, and you see his utility belt at the bottom, which is kind of a weird perspective, but it's okay. It works for me. And then you get the main picture of Batman leaping out at you with his hands reaching for you, his mouth in I don't know if it's a yell or just doing that weird, that scary Batman look that he does, which is echoed later in this comic. So, but I'll get to that. And then you have, like I said, the nested Batman. So then you have on the Bat logo on that Batman's chest, you see another Batman leaping at you, and then there is another. You can barely make it out. At least I can't with these old eyes. But he's there, I think. Another one coming out at you. So that makes at least 1, 2, 3, 4 Batman leaping out at you on this cover. So I thought that just a cool image. I liked it. All right. So again, this is written by Grant Morrison, of course, with art by Chris Burnham, with colors by Nathan Fairbairn, and lettered by Steve Wands and Travis Lanham. This is called The Dark Knight and the Devil's Daughter. So, page 1. Starts off where we left off last issue. Commissioner Gordon has come and tells Bruce Wayne, "You're under arrest, hands in the air." And you get the dialogue boxes here, which is from Commissioner Gordon's point of view, which I thought that was a nice touch. Everything's been so in your face with Batman and the events of Robin's death and all that stuff. So getting a character from the Bat family's perspective that isn't someone in tights was kind of nice, and there's also a poetic reason for that, considering that Commissioner Gordon was on the scene after Bruce's parents were murdered. So, and they touch on that here in just a little bit. So let's see here. They arrest him. Commissioner Gordon is bringing a couple coffees down to the interrogation room, and he's talking about how it's his job to make Bruce talk, to tell Commissioner Gordon why and how he endangered Gotham City and his country. So there, huge potential ramifications here for Bruce Wayne. Although now that I think about it, it just occurred to me as I was talking, why is Commissioner Gordon doing this? Why isn't the FBI all over this? But that would not make such a good story, right? So it's got to have that tie with Commissioner Gordon here. And so you got Bruce Wayne, and you get a good look at him on page 2 here. He's bruised, he's cut, his left eye is swollen shut, and of course Commissioner Gordon notices this, and what in hell, Bruce? He says, "You look like roadkill. How did you get so beat up?" And he talks about the rumors that Bruce was always in the rough stuff, which is convenient considering. Of course, Bruce does that old line, "Blame boredom and dangerous sports, Jim." So Commissioner Gordon talks about the bat symbol is banned, your company accounts are in free fall, Gotham City is a war zone. They blew up Wayne Tower. They brainwashed kids and brought the city to its knees. How did it get to this? So Bruce thinks about this for a second. You get a nice close-up of him with his beat-up face. And I think Chris Burnham does a really good job here. I've always enjoyed his art on this series. And he's able to elicit emotion in these images, which is, I think, a very skillful on his part. And you get, and maybe I'm bringing a lot into this, but that's the point of what I'm doing here, right? Is talking about how this comic has affected me, how it makes me feel, why I enjoy it so much, and this is one reason, because just the look in Bruce's one good eye in this panel just conveys a lot of emotion, a lot of introspection, and that's what we get here in the words as well. So it's nice to get the dialogue, but it's also really nice to actually see the origin of those words. So anyway, Bruce says, "An old flame set the town on fire. Billionaire playboy, beautiful bad girl. We had a son, bad seed, bad blood. I did my best to rescue the boy from his mother's influence." And in smaller, and here's where the text, this is where the letters do a really good job here. The text gets a little smaller. "I failed. I triggered a kind of war." And Gordon responds with, "So that's why you built a private army of international Batmen? Dear God, Bruce, you dated the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, the world's #1 criminal mastermind?" My first thought, this is Gordon again, internal dialogue here. My first thought was to ask, how did Batman feel about that? So I have to admit, maybe I just missed something, and sometimes I do that. I read my comics, I read them quickly. I generally don't go back and read them again unless I'm planning to do something like this. So when Gordon said you dated the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, I was like, wait a minute, how does he know? So I must have missed something in one of the issues leading up to this. Anyway, so he asks, how did Batman feel about that? And so then you get to the next page, and it says, looking in his eyes, it was obvious. And then what we get is this flashback to when Batman is about ready to fight Talia. So I thought that was a nice transition. Anyway, so Talia's coming down these steps towards Batman, talking about how she already rules the world and all she's doing is making it official. You killed our son, Talia, all just to get back at me? Our son, grown in a jar, enlisted to your aimless cause. Martyr to folly in his little cape and boots. It was over for Damian when you dragged him into your childish game of masks, Halloween costumes, and clues. Which, wow. That's pretty biting. And a little bit of, real world seeping in there into our little fantasy land of Batman. And it's really sad, too, considering I realize these are just fictional characters, but the death of Damian was pretty powerful, from a storytelling standpoint, at least for me. and to have Talia rubbing in Bruce's face, it's just, man, she's cold. Cold, cold, cold woman. Let's see. Bruce says, or Batman says, this stopped being a game a long time ago, and she responds with, then why are you dressed like a bat? Kiss me, detective, I dare you. Show me there's still a man beneath that mask. And they have swords drawn and coming at each other when she says this. And then the next page, we go back to Commissioner Gordon with Bruce, and this is where I mentioned Commissioner Gordon being there at the beginning. And he tells Bruce, talk to me. How long have you and I been friends? Since the beginning, Jim. Since it all started. And then there's this great the next panel in the background is I guess he's I don't know if he's just a B cop or if he's lieutenant at that point. No, he can't be lieutenant. That's when Bruce comes back about ready to start his career as Batman. So I guess he's just a patrolman at this point. Anyway, there's little Bruce and Thomas and Martha's bodies in the background. So I just thought that was again a nice, or at least a nice flashback scene. Just one little picture. There's no captions. There's no dialogue. It's just this little picture of Bruce there right after his parents are dead with Jim Gordon there. It's just a very powerful image. Again, Chris Burnham does a great job here. And so then Bruce says it's just there are people whose hurt feelings can trigger wars, people whose broken hearts become grand opera on an international stage, and this is where for the next several panels we get Bruce and Talia actually kissing. I tried to fight something I barely understood and I barely survived, Jim. And in the background, so in the foreground there's Batman and Talia kissing, which seems kind of strange, but also makes a lot of sense too. And then in the background of that is the cityscape, and it's burning. And then you turn the page, and so they have a couple just small panels of them still kissing, and then so you get the cityscape, and then you start seeing a little bit more detail. So it really focuses in, and it shows these long panels, 3 panels on this page, and it shows Commissioner Gordon and the cops fighting against the brainwashed kids and the Leviathan troops, I guess. The next panel has Nightwing and Red Robin up above, and the new Knight, of Knight and Squire, and this guy in a purple suit and a purple top hat that I don't recognize. I may have just missed that as I was reading this series, but I don't recognize that character. Anyway, they're shown fighting. Again, the next page, more people are fighting, and the little box that have been showing Bruce and Talia kissing, they're just silhouetted, and it's kind of pulled back a little bit, and again, and then that pullback continues in the way that Chris Burnham shows us is here's the planet Earth, here's the globe, and you've got the Ouroboros device in the background, and you've got you got Batwing here fighting, and you've got the Native American Batman and Batman and Robin and some others here. Just all over the globe, this fight is going on. So I thought that was a really cool scene. Anyway, they stop kissing now, and turns out that Talia has poisoned Bruce with Digitalis. And she says, I'm sure your antidote is up to date. Look, I know you'd like the rules to be cartoonish and the stakes to be clear. So again, we get that criticism from Talia about how childish Batman is, and I have to wonder, is Grant Morrison kind of poking fun at us, the fans, a little bit? And and I know he loves he loves this character, he loves these stories, he loves comics and what they can do. Just based on interviews I read and interviews I've listened to with him, he delights in this stuff. So I kind of wonder what, or is it just a comment, that this is cartoonish and silly and childish, and yet it's still interesting and thought-provoking. Or it can be anyway. So, I don't know, I kind of like that. Anyway, Talia tells Batman that basically, kill me and save your city. Kill me or I kill you. Get a nice 2-page splash page there with the credits and the title. And then you have, of course, you have the image of the Ouroboros going around and around and around on this page. So there you go. There's that tie-in. This next page is lovely, 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 because you get them sword fighting now, and in the foreground basically is their lock sword or cross swords forming the panel borders here. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4 panels basically with a foreground image. So you kind of get 5 panels in a way. So I thought that was really nice. And then we go back to, on the next page, you get back to the interrogation room, where Commissioner Gordon, lays it on the line for Bruce. They're talking about a murder investigation, terrorism charges. Bruce, there were 2 headstones in the family plot at Wayne Manor when we found you. What happened to your son? What happened to Talia al Ghul? Bruce says, 2 shots killed my father. I was 10 years old. The third bullet left a smoking hole in my mother's new fur coat. It left a hole in me. A hole in everything. That's how it felt anyway. The pain was so terrible I decided I could never love anyone ever again. And that's really the crux of this, right? When you think about what happened at the beginning, or what Bruce said at the beginning of this story, about why Talia went on a rampage here. And we get that on the next page where Batman, so we go back again to the fight between Talia and Batman, and he says to Talia, I'm sorry, I couldn't love you the way you wanted me to, Talia. You're right, you're too big for me to fight. Anyway, so let me go back a little bit. So the very top panel of this next page, so they're fighting with their swords, and they hit so hard that the blades, both blades, shatter. And the shards of the sword go flying, and you see that it hits both of them, and blood is spurting. And there's actually, I just noticed this now. I didn't notice this the first 2 times I read this, but a bit of Talia's hair gets cut off and goes flying off the panel here. So there's that, and then we go back to the interrogation room just for one panel here. I know I'm finished, Jim, but I think I was right to support Batman Incorporated. We did one last great thing. We saved the world, which is exactly what Batman Incorporated was supposed to do. Talia, so then we go back to the fight. Talia says, my parents died too, my father, over and over again. I used a new poison on the blade. You have 10 minutes to live. And so again, just now I'm, the 10 years old thing, the 10 minutes. Is this, I have to wonder, because it's Grant Morrison, is there some sort of importance to the number 10 here? Maybe it's nothing. Anyway, Batman says this thing about why he was sorry he couldn't love her, and then he starts to, the poison starts to affect him, and you get this nice panel of him just kind of falling over, but the way that Chris Burnham does it, it's like Batman's costume is melting a little bit as he falls, and you see the dinosaur in the Batcave kind of circling again like an Ouroboros. So you get that repetitive imagery of the circular Ouroboros stuff in here. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so he's on the floor dying, and she tells him, beg me for your antidote. Who can save you now that Robin's dead again? I wonder. And then, in the nick of time, and then Jason shows up as Wingman, which is really weird. I'm not sure why they kept going with the whole Wingman thing after we found out that Wingman was Jason Todd in an earlier issue. Why not just go back to the Red Hood identity? So I'm not quite sure what that's about. I'm sure that there's probably something in here that I've missed, but I didn't see it. I wanted to mention. So here, here on the previous page where I mentioned Bruce Wayne in the interrogation room and Batman telling Talia about how he's sorry he couldn't love her. So you get that nice imagery, and it's exactly the same level on the page, the same kind of pose. But so you see Bruce's damaged face with the cuts and the stitching and everything, and on the right side of that on that page in that panel in the Batcave, you see where the blade shards cut Batman on the chin and the cheek and the eye and all that stuff. So you get that's a nice symmetry there on that page. Anyway, Jason shows up saying, "Don't kill him! Don't kill him! They gave me what you want in return for Batman's life, remember?" And Batman lifts his head up, and he's getting weak, very weak. And the lettering shows that he's talking more quietly because he's dying here. Jason, no, not you! I trusted you. Don't do this. Don't let her win. And I realize when I say the lines, it's not as dramatic, but in my head it sounds pretty dramatic. And here's next page. Jason is holding the Ouroboros box, or trigger, I guess is what it's called, and he says, "I'm sorry about the kid. We'd have made great partners. Give him the antidote, Talia, and the trigger's yours." Okay, I just want to comment about that. We'd have made great partners. Jason would think that because Damian, he was a killer. He was prone to violence, and he wanted to basically do what he wanted to do and not necessarily what his father wanted him to do. So yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. But it's interesting to note or to read that because Dick and Damian were such a good team in the Batman and Robin title. They were excellent partners. So I would have liked to have seen, I guess, that a little bit more under Grant Morrison's pen. So anyway, Talia talks about the Ouroboros trigger. 7 cities will fall when I press the button and release a new source of energy to light up the world. Leviathan will rise from the chaos. And she also drops the vial that contains the antidote on Batman's head, and it kind of bounces off and away from him a little bit. But I thought that was interesting. Again, we go back to the beginning of Ra's al Ghul, where he basically wants to get rid of a certain amount of the population and start anew. And I thought that this whole idea of a new source of energy to light up the world. So Talia again is just following in her father's footsteps. Anyway, so she gets the Ouroboros trigger, presses it, and nothing happens. And Jason, with a big smile on his face, almost laughing, it looks like to me, says, "Our people disarmed your ring of death 5 minutes ago." Now see, if Morrison had put 10 minutes ago in there, then I definitely think that there's something up with the number 10. Anyway, "I didn't come here alone, Talia. I came because I owe you one, and I'm telling you to run before the scary bad people get here." The chutzpah of Jason Todd just knows no bounds. Talia, and here's where the coloring is really good here, because so all of a sudden Talia with her enraged face, and it's all colored in hues of red. "Run? You're telling me? How dare you, boy?" Anyway, Batman takes the antidote and says, Wayne Industries beat you to the punch with a stable metamaterial. My advice, never trust a senile Nazi, and walk away. That reminds me of some film, but I can't place it right now as I'm talking, so does that sound familiar to you? Does that seem like a callback to some other, I don't know, maybe James Bond thing, or I'm not sure, but anyway, Batman gets up, points at her very dramatically, and says, "You might think you own the world, but you'll never have Gotham City." And again, Talia does it. She stabs at him with her wit. "Listen to yourself, you posturizing, patronizing bastard. I'll buy Wayne Industries. I'll erase your name from history." She really doesn't like Bruce Wayne all that much, does she? You with your jokers and riddlers, your evil doctors, all those grotesque mental patients you choose to, quote, match wits with. You'll never rise above them. You'll play in the mud for the rest of your life. Oh, my detective, you should have killed me when you had the chance. And so that's the dialogue in these 3 panels. But what you see is Talia just kind of looking at the broken remains of her sword. And Batman's slowly moving towards her in the background while Jason his attention is elsewhere. He's looking somewhere else off panel. And in the second panel, as she's saying this, oh, my detective, you should have killed me when you had the chance. Then Batman, who is right behind Talia now, and she's kind of looking down and back towards him, but he sees what Jason saw, and Batman's one good eye goes wide, and he stops. And here's a great panel of Talia's face, and in the background is just white. Well, a little bit of yellow, so it's kind of like radiating out, but there's a little bit of yellow on one side. And she says, and she sees, and she's got a bit of wide-eyed surprise there, as she says, "Have the chance." And then someone off panel says, "You know as well as I do, Batman doesn't kill." And then someone with a golden gun fires it and hits Talia in between the eyes. Her head snaps back. Batman is going to catch her. Jason's just standing there. And next page, first panel, is Kathy Kane holding the smoking gun, saying, "Some people actually do own the world. We've been closing in on Talia al Ghul for a long time. Thanks for helping us lead her into a trap she couldn't escape." Batman is now holding dead Talia's body. "Kathy? Bronze Tiger killed you, I thought. Kathy Kane. No!" It all comes full circle in the end, Bruce. Eye of the Gorgon. Headmistress to Spiral Control. World criminal neutralized. And the next panel is you see half of Kathy's face, and then you get the spiral imagery, the spiral type stuff that we've seen before in the comic. "Stick to what you do best, and don't try to find me. I don't exist." And then we get this weird cut, to me, at least it seems to me, and the way that the panel borders above this one last panel on this page suggests to me that there's a cut in time, because all we see is Batman standing there alone. At least there are no people in the Batcave. He's just kind of standing there looking off into the Batcave, and Batcow is right there. And we haven't seen Batcow before in this comic, in this issue, but suddenly Batcow is there. It says "moo." Batman says "shut up," and then there's this black cat down near the bottom of the panel meowing. So weird. It was odd to me. Now we go back to the interrogation room. Gordon is saying, "The city's in shock. No one's seen Batman for days or any sign of his agents." Bruce says, "Batman died, Jim." "That's what I heard. Batman met his match." Police officer comes into the room to hand Gordon something, but he's saying, "Wouldn't be the first time I heard that." And so he asks the police officer what this is. It's from the mayor's office. Gordon reads it. "Son of a... The government just shut down this whole investigation. A mystery woman cleared your bail. I'm not sure what just happened, but you must be the luckiest man in Gotham, Bruce. You're free to go." Next page. "I don't know if Batman's dead or not. All I know is this. Parts of the city out there, it's like 0 year all over again." So that was kind of nice of Grant to do. Have a little a little connection to what's going on in the Batman title with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, the 0 year storyline, which makes you go, what's coming up, right? So that was kind of neat that they do that. "If we ever need a Batman, we need him right now, Bruce." Okay, so that line to me suggests, again, that Gordon knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, right? At least to me. My priority is to rebuild my company. I have to reassure my shareholders. As for Batman, you'd have to ask Batman about that. Gordon says, I hope I get the chance. If he's still out there, he knows where I am. If I ever need to call him, I like to think he'll get the message. And at this point, Commissioner Gordon pulls out his tie, and he's got a little tie clip there with a little bat symbol on it. And then we get the internal dialogue from Gordon. Bruce Wayne nodded, grave, sad-eyed, and then he was gone, leaving me to think about what he'd said. Then we cut to Bruce leaving the police department. Alfred is there. I canceled my vacation, sir. There's something rather unusual I think you need to see. And then, so again, like I said, Gordon says, leaving me to think about what he said. And here's the quote, again, Jim's internal dialogue. I looked into that hole in things over and over again until it hurt Jim. And you know what I found in there? Nothing. And then we get to I guess it's is this the Wayne Manor graveyard? Anyway, they're looking at 2 gravestones, but they're unmarked, so one is Damien's and I presume the other is Talia's, so mother and son there. The graves have been dug up. The bodies are gone. As Alfred says, as far as I can determine, it happened while you were detained by the authorities. Earlier this evening, you talked about retiring Batman, sir, and I completely understand, but this... So, wow. Bruce was going to give up being Batman after this adventure. That to me, that just blew my mind. That was huge. Of course, that can't happen. Not any long-term or any kind of permanent, quote-unquote, permanent sense. There's nothing permanent in comics, right? And indeed, we see Batman coming out of the Batcave in the next page. I'll get to that in a second. But so again, I want to go back to what Gordon said that Bruce said. So I looked into that hole in things over and over again until it hurt Jim. And you know what I found in there? Nothing. And a space big enough to hold everything. I thought that line was brilliant. That line personifies Bruce Wayne Batman to a T. He loses his parents. That drives him to become Batman. But if you think about it, for a guy who says he couldn't love anyone ever again, and yeah, he's psychotic enough to go dress up as a bat to fight crime, to prevent other people from experiencing the pain and loss that he himself experienced. But what does he do? His life is filled with people that care about him and that he cares about. Alfred and Dick and Jason and Tim and Damien and God, the list goes on and on and on. I thought that was a brilliant line. So, summing up Batman pretty succinctly. Like I said, next page. So Bruce leaves the graveyard and heads into Wayne Manor. Then we see in this long hallway shot the clock that hides the entrance to the Batcave, and then we get a close-up shot of the clock, and it's open. The entrance to the cave is open, and then we have Batman heading out into the city. Jim's dialogue continues. We all have our own ways of dealing with grief. I've had my suspicions about Bruce Wayne and Batman for a long time, but I keep them to myself. Suspicions. I don't know if I buy that. I think that's an easy way out. I think that's just Grant Morrison going, yeah, he knows, but we don't want to explicitly state that he knows, so here's my way of suggesting he knows without actually doing that. So, in my mind, Commissioner Gordon knows. But other stories, like recently I read, what was it, Batgirl 22, I think it was. I don't know. It suggested to me that Gordon doesn't know who Batman is, let alone that Batgirl is his daughter. So, anyway, Next page, we get a bunch of smaller panels. Batman's out doing his thing because Batman never dies, right? All I really need to know is this: Batman always comes back, bigger and better, shiny and new. Batman never dies. It never ends. It probably never will. Like I just said. Yep, that's it. And there's this great shot of this panel where the "It Probably Never Will" box is of Batman leaping at you. There's lightning in the background. He's mostly in shadow. You can just barely see his hands reaching for you as he flies towards you, and he's got his mouth wide open, and all you see is his teeth and his tongue. It's actually pretty scary looking. Calling back to the image on the cover, I think. And now we get to the end of the issue, the epilogue, which I'm just, how dare Grant Morrison do this to me? Anyway, so what you see is some people talking, and one of them is Ra's al Ghul, who pronounces, "I will hound you into the grave, detective. I will give you no rest. I will have my revenge and raise an army grown in darkness." And then in the final page, Ra's al Ghul opens up this big-ass door, and here's that chamber that we've seen before, growing the clones of Damian. And he says, "Sons of Batman, rise." And in the very lower right-hand corner here's the Ouroboros symbol again. So, as Gordon said, Batman never dies. It just goes on and on and on. What a great issue. I know I mostly regurgitated what was already in the issue, but I still can't get over how much I really enjoyed this particular comic. The storyline overall that Grant Morrison has been telling for the last, I don't know how many years. It was a good ending. Of course, all great comic book stories always open up a door to the next big thing. So here's the next big thing. Ra's al Ghul is back, and he's going to go after Batman. What I hope doesn't happen, though, is that we get a bunch of stories with clones of Damian coming after Batman. I kind of hope they would kind of drop that. If Damian is to remain or to be dead, I don't know. I think it would kind of here I go again, waxing philosophically about a fictional character, but I think it sullies the memory of Damian to keep bringing back clones of him. So, but who knows? Under a skilled writer and artist, I think they could do pretty much anything. And so now I'm allowing for this, right? But they can pretty much do anything, or do something, I should say, that would pique my interest and make me change my mind. So, but that's what I love about comics. Anyway, I think I've talked long enough about this wonderful issue. If you haven't read it, I hope maybe that I've provided some context, or at least talked enough about how much I enjoy it that it might spur you to read it as well. If you have read it, and I'm sure most people who read Batman comics may have read this, I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. Please let me know. Whether you agree with me or not, I'd love to hear what you have to say about Grant Morrison and Chris Burnham's run on this title, the story that they have been crafting all this time, and how it has ended. Man, I'm sorry to see Grant Morrison depart. This has been such a ride. It's been so much fun. If you'd like to leave feedback on this episode, please do so by emailing longboxreview@gmail.com. You can also leave voicemail at 208-953-1841. Leave comments about individual episodes at the blog at longboxreview.wordpress.com. Please rate and review the podcast on iTunes. You can also find Longbox Review on Stitcher. The Longbox Review podcast is a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Thanks for listening.